All right. Welcome to the power of being a woman. I am so excited we're having this conversation. It's interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is what is this? This is like Women's History Month, I think, and it's really fun to me that this like really was coming up to share at this time. And so, what I want to do today, as we're talking about like power and being a woman and like what that means and how we can really like maximize it. I want to share some thoughts to really just help you sink into like connecting with what it means for you to feel powerful. So, one, just as we're getting started, if you do need a journal, if you want a glass of water as you're listening to this, feel free, as I'm just talking about some of these beginning details, to have some of those things. I think there's going to be some nuggets that you're really going to love and want to note. And yeah, and the other thing I just want to get you thinking about, just as we're starting, one of the things I really love to incorporate in the conversations that I share and when I'm sharing some of my lessons is that you not only like sink in and adopt what I'm saying and try it on, but you play with kind of like, ooh, what does that wake up in me? What does that think about for me? And so I really encourage you to just play as you're thinking, as you're soaking these things in, to think like, ooh, how does that feel for me? And to like let it really come alive in you as you're listening. So we'll start. One, I invite you, if you feel like you need, and I feel like there's always it's always a great time to just take a couple breaths and just notice like how you're feeling, how you're doing, just taking a pause. This is a Sunday morning that we're recording this, so whether or not you're listening on the replay still on this weekend day, we're here now on this Sunday, and just taking a couple inhales and exhales. Just noticing without forcing anything with your breath, just noticing how it feels to tune into your breath, to become aware of not only your inhale, but your exhale. And just noticing if there's any part of your body that's feeling alive, maybe doing a little shoulder roll if you're feeling a certain part of your body is holding some tension, letting it not have to be something that's about holding still, but letting it be an active process of just tuning in and making adjustments. Beautiful. And taking as much time as you need just to stay with those breaths. And remember, even as we're going through this, right, part of what we're going to be talking about is how we get to see power in new ways. And one of the sources of power as women that we accidentally learn to discount is just how much we have access to within ourselves. So as you're listening, I invite you to just really like tune into what's going on in your body as you're listening to this, and seeing that as such a beautiful aspect of like your discovery of what matters to you, and you're coming alive as you are relating, right, to me sharing this, to how you're feeling in the journey like this. One of the things I'm going to be sharing more and more about is how much there is power within what is actually happening inside of us in ways that I just never knew earlier in my life. And so I'm going to be reminding you to come back to this in moments. So as you're taking those breaths and as we get started, I want you to just think for a moment about, right? I imagine you're here because you like this idea of feeling, right? Like, how do I feel more powerful as a woman? How do I connect with that? And so I invite you to think about like one area of your life where you might be like, yes, I'd love to feel more powerful there. I'd love to feel like I can create more change here, like I have more access to, yeah, to making change, to creating a different outcome, right? What is that area of your life for you? So maybe just noting that down somewhere so that you have it. And reminding you as you do that, right? You are in the right place. If you are curious about, like, how do you feel more powerful? How do you feel more connected to your ability to create change? And how do you do it in ways where you don't feel so much like you're white knuckling, which can be very familiar for so many of us. And like, how does it actually incorporate more beauty, more ease, more grace? So these are the things that we're going to be talking about. And there's going to be a piece in here about that aspect of dissolving feelings of shame and guilt and powerlessness. So that becomes easier and easier to access. So if this is something that you are excited about and a yes for, I invite, like, if you feel free to put a yes in the chat, put like, say a yes out loud on the recording. Even if you're listening to the replay, maybe you just like say a yes to yourself with a hand on your heart, right? Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So yeah, this is the juicy, yummy conversation we're gonna have. So we're gonna go about an hour, I believe. And so we'll probably stop close to the top of the hour. Sometimes I get a little bit excited. And if you have questions or things come up, we might go a little bit over. So sometimes I allot myself 90 minutes for this. But yeah, we're gonna aim for an hour. So I want to share as we start, like, a moment for me that I really like didn't feel powerless when I was younger, and like, and how that has actually come to support me and been such a catalyst for a lot of really, really beautiful things. Because I do actually more and more think about myself as someone who's like, whoa, like I know I can create change. I've actually had these really beautiful journey in my relationship where now I feel like more loved than I ever have. My partner is just this really sweet, wonderful man that just wants to provide for me really beautifully. I've been learning more and more about how to what I'm loving calling like taking aligned risk. Like having moments in my life where something just feels really right to do, and it felt like if the moments that feel scary and there's like a lot of energy inside of me, but I'm like, ooh, I just have to do this. And one of those being a few years deciding to leave the full-time job I was working at to really share this message and to teach, and which was a pretty big risk, but I'm like, I've learned how to respond to myself and my life more and more in a way where I'm like, okay, right, where I can respond to that fear in a different way. Boundaries feel easier than ever. And I'm actually in this process of reconnecting in relationships that I really like years ago. I thought they were completely lost. And these are all things that I'm like kind of in awe of right now that I'm getting to experience, because I think about so many years when what's coming to mind for me is the Halsey song "Bad at Love." I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I used to be like driving in my car when like the lyrics are like, "I'm bad at love, but you can't blame me for trying." I would be like driving my car, singing this song, like being like, yeah, I'm bad at love, I'm bad at life, but we're here for it. We gotta try. And it all just felt like, yeah, like life and love and feeling powerful enough to impact the areas of my life that were struggling felt really, really difficult. And so, and the how I've accessed this feeling of like, oh my gosh, no, I can create this beautiful relationship I love. So many of these things I want, right? Like they are shiftable. I can create an impact, right? I can create this shift. So much of it has been learning to understand power in ways that I did not grow up understanding power. And so I want to start for a moment just with one of these starting points of a moment where I really felt powerless, because I feel like there was so much information in there that over time I have learned to see in a new way. And I want to share this, and I invite you to think about, right, a moment where maybe you had, like a similar experience for you, right, where there was this moment where you lost that connection to your power, or maybe, right, you just weren't right. One of the things I love so much is this concept that we learn and then we unlearn, and then we relearn, right? And what starts this process is the learning without trying piece. Right? And I don't think any of us ever, no one ever intends to teach us powerlessness. I think, I think everyone wants to know and trust and feel their power like it's something they can be in touch with a sense of ease and grace. But we all have these moments where we have that feeling of, oh my gosh, maybe I don't have power here. And so I want to share one of those early moments for me and how over my life I've learned to create those turning points. And I want you to listen from this sense of like, oh, what was that moment for me? And I invite you as you're listening to maybe like have a moment where you adjust to really like feel your chest lifted, feel your shoulders relaxed, like feel a posture of your own strength, right? Of your own ability to tune into your life in a way now as an adult that as you're listening to this story of a younger me and reflecting on your own life as a younger you, you can hear it from a new lens of recognizing, where more is possible. And so does that sound yummy to do? I invite you to like, yeah, put it like, yeah, connect with the yes in you, pop it in the chat, feel it within yourself. So when I was about 5 years old, I took the school bus to school. And we had this bus driver that was like first one on, first like all the way to the back. So he had this rule that if you were the first one on, you had to go to the back of the bus. And so I ended up with these boys in my neighborhood that were a little bit older that were back in the bus. And one of the days, these boys brought fake blood on the bus. And they had a fight. They had a fake fight. And of course, little me, 5-year-old me, did not know that this was fake, did not know what was happening. And I ended up passing out. I fainted on the bus. Little 5-year-old me. And what was kind of funny, actually, in hindsight, was one of the boys that was playing with the fake blood, that was totally fine, ended up taking me to the school nurse when we got to school because people knew, I was sleeping. I wasn't really there. I wasn't really paying attention. And yeah, but I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if these boys were really hurting each other. I didn't know what was happening. It was all so scary. And so I passed out. And what was fascinating, right, is as a 5-year-old, I didn't know how to express what happened. I didn't know how to process the fear that I felt. There were so many things about the moment that I just wasn't equipped to handle well. But passing out on a public school bus and being the only one to do it became like a really scary thing. And it was something that the people around me as well didn't understand, right? They didn't understand how scared I was. They didn't know that I didn't know how to deal with that fear well. They didn't know how to help me articulate what was happening and help me shift it. And so from that day, unfortunately, or fortunately now, because I get to share from the other side of it, what started to happen is that the people around me, the only way they knew how to relate to me was that something must be wrong with me, right? I felt scared. The only way I knew how to handle that fear in the moment was to completely escape the moment, right? And pass out. And because there was fear around what was happening to me and this worry that something was wrong with me that needed to be fixed, right? Over time, because this became the first time that it happened, but not the only time, right? I started to pass out of fear, and people around me got more and more scared, and they were trying to control what was wrong with me, fix me, right? And I started to think that that was the same thing that was true for me, right? That something must be wrong with me, that I needed to be fixed, that there's something I needed to get rid of within me. And so you can imagine, right? And if you can resonate with a moment, maybe it's a completely different type of moment, right? But these moments where I think this is a common thing to have a moment of fear, of powerlessness, and to have the surrounding thoughts that can become our own, that something must be wrong, that something needs to be gotten rid of. And it can make life like no longer fun. It can make relationships so incredibly difficult, because what I started to notice within myself when I had this thought that something must be wrong, that something needs to be fixed, that there must be something going on in me that I have to get rid of and find something to replace it because this is a problem, right? And oh, I lost my train of thought for a second. Um, oh, what was the piece here that I wanted to share? Oh, this is the piece, right? So part of what happened is in relationships, right? There was a piece of me that started to become really great at trying to manage myself. So I was in as few scary situations as possible, and to manage how I responded to other people and what they were doing, right? There was a very active part of me that tried to start to control my actions, the things I was doing outside of me, and to try to influence what other people were doing outside of me, so that that feeling of powerlessness and that fear, right, could stay away as far away as possible. And right, like, give me a nod or a yes, or like, again, if you're even listening to the recording, right, just like a hand on your heart and just an acknowledgement of this. Because I think that this is so common, right? This isn't, I don't think that this is all an individual thing for me, right? This is a way as humans that we learn to relate, that, right, it makes sense in certain ways, right? It's like, I feel powerless right now. I feel scared. What can I do to control this and try to make this happen as little as possible? So that was what I did, right? For a really long time, I really kept trying to figure out what was wrong with me. How could I make this stop? How could I get rid of this? I started to relate to everything that was going on inside of me that led to passing out as my Achilles heel, right? As a thing that was a weakness. And yeah, that was the only way I knew how to relate to it, until right. I started, as you can imagine, right, in your own moments, I'm sure, of feeling powerless, nice, right? Even though you might be going about it, right? Like, okay, how can I fix this, right? What's wrong? What can I get rid of? Right? This desire to shift it. Um, yeah, that is a really beautiful thing that wakes us up, and we have this opportunity to step into a place that can like really, really shift it in a new way. And I had one of these moments after a blood draw. Actually, blood draws for me were one of those moments. So I had this particularly rough blood draw, and I was at this time, actually, I was in an office building where I was working at a medical center, and the blood draw place was like literally I just had to walk out the door and go to the office. So it was kind of cool, because even though I had this rough experience, for me to go back to the office where I was working, I just had to go out the door in the same building on the same floor and just into the doctor's office where I was working at the time. And so I had this rough experience. Like, the woman just she didn't get my vein right. I ended up getting bruised. I got a lot of the fear came up. Yeah, it was a tough moment. So I come back to the office and I'm like, I'm gonna go back to work. I can do this. But I'm starting to feel all this fear come up, all these feels come up. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go try to lie down for a few minutes. So we had this little acupuncture room that was in this quiet closed door. So I go in there and I lie down, and I'm not feeling good, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not going to be able to make it, right? I'm not going to be able to make it through this work day. I'm thinking I'm not even going to be able to get myself to drive home, right? Like, I'm starting to feel like this is a problem, right? This is a problem. I'm a problem. This has to be fixed, right? And I'm saying, like, what is wrong with me, right? At the time I was in my very early 30s, but I'm in my 30s, right? I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I should be over this right now, right? I should be able to handle this. And I was kind of on this cascade of really focusing on what's wrong with me and worried that something was bad. And I had this moment where, right, so all of the stuff I was like learning and researching and trying to find a way to shift this, where I was like, wait a second, I'm being real hard on myself right now. I am scared, right? I am sad, right? Like, this is a hard moment for me, right? And I was like, just for fun, because I can't get up anyway right now. I'm a little too dizzy. I'm like, I'm going to do an experiment. And so I just started to list, like in my head, and I think I was actually saying some of it out loud a little bit, how I was feeling, right? I was like, I am feeling scared and I am feeling nauseous right now. And actually, at the time, I knew about EFT, like that emotional freedom technique. So while I was doing this, I just started like tapping on these meridian points. And I was like, all right, even though I'm feeling this, right? Like I'm willing to love myself. I'm willing to accept that this is here. Like I'm willing to be with this. And the crazy thing was that blew my mind was that I started to feel relief, like pretty quickly, actually. And I actually started to feel like I might even be able to stand up, which for me, right, like at 3 or 4 minutes before that, I was like, I'm gonna pass out again. I can't do this. Something's wrong with me. But with just literally changing, right, just not even force of will that I should be doing better, right? I actually let that go. And I was like, I'm willing to love this. I'm willing to honor this. I'm willing to be with this. Not just the emotions, but the physical sensations that I was feeling. And it was a really powerful turning point for me because I could not believe how much better I felt and how fast it shifted. And this like really helped to reinforce something for me that I'm going to repeat a few times in this class because I think it's so, so powerful. Is that so often in our life experiences, there is nothing you have to get rid of, and there is nothing you have to fix to know your power. And so often, what the actual truth is that when you have something come up in your life that you care about, right? When you care, you come alive, right? Like when we care, we come alive. And that aliveness that you feel in your emotions, in your sensations, right? In all of the things that happen when we realize we care and we're coming alive, is there's this window that opens for genuine, true connection, right? To what is happening within you, to the possibilities that you want to create in what's happening around you. And with that window, right, of caring and coming alive and the possibility of connection, we so often, right, we accidentally learn to close it, right? Because that caring does bring up fear, right? And the moment that so many of us learn to kind of like respond with something must be wrong, right? What's wrong is what's happened is we accidentally close the door on the connection to what is truly alive. And this is actually where, like yeah, I mean, the truth is what we accidentally do is like cut off from the power because we go into trying to fix something where the power source, right, is within. And so this was a huge, huge moment for me, like realizing being in that acupuncture bed, switching to really shifting to actually being kind to myself and to being willing to be with what was actually alive. Really, I didn't fully understand that I was accessing power. I wouldn't have said it in that way at that time. But what I've come to know is that my relationship, I was building a new relationship to what was actually happening inside of me. And so little by little, I started to play with this work of what it meant to love every part of myself, right? Not just the emotions, right? Not just changing my relationships to my thoughts, but really a true big piece of this for me was like sensations, like how I actually responded to sensations because dizziness and nausea was so scary for me. And what was fascinating for me too was I didn't just start to feel comfortable with like things I felt scared of, but it started to change when I was in my relationships and there were scary conversations, right? Where it wasn't just some of those initial spots of, oh no, is someone going to get hurt, which was where some of that original fear originated for me, right? But it also, I could see how it was impacting all of the relationships, to start to play with the willingness to be with and love all of the things that were happening inside of me, to be gentle with them, to have grace with them. And yeah, and that was just an incredible cascade that has contributed so much to feeling more and more of this sense of power. So I'd love, like, I'm just going to pause just for a moment because I'm going to share some of these key elements that I've realized in looking back that have really, really helped, like, wake this up and contributed. Like, when I look back and kind of untangle what has started to happen in those moments, I want to share some of those key pieces so you can reflect on them for yourself. But I just want to pause for a moment to have you check in, right? Like, can you see some of these moments for you? Does this idea of, oh my gosh, yeah, when I care, I do come alive. And that does become a really fascinating, interesting, but sometimes scary moment, to realize that I'm coming alive and that there's care involved and there's an opportunity for connection, but there's fear that comes up there too. Does this, like, I'd love to even know if this feels true, if you feel this sparking something within you. So, yeah, feel free to take a breath or two into that. And if there is anything you'd like to share in hearing that story, anything that it wakes up in you, feel free to pop it in the comments. Or even if you're listening, or even on the recording too, to just, this is a beautiful and important and so valuable conversation, but I know it's vulnerable. And so if it feels good as well, to just jot a couple notes for yourself in your journal about what this might be waking up for you, I invite you to do that. Amazing. Yeah, I'll take one more sip of water and then we'll, yeah, yeah, that's really beautiful. I want to just, from one of the comments that came in, right? It's like, um there was this share that, like, they don't pass out, but that there's a sense of checking out, right? Exactly. And that's such a beautiful way to say it, right? Because for me, that passing out is a little bit more of an extreme version, but I love this, pointing this out, right? Is sometimes what we do is we don't go to that point of physically fainting, but there are different ways we can learn to check out, right? And numb ourselves out. And this can be, right, like, for some people this is by, like, tangible substances, right? Some people might be like, oh, like food or alcohol, it can be a nice way to kind of cut off. But in my experience too, right, numbing can just be a really great way. We sort of can just distract ourselves, start doing something else. And actually, I'm so glad you put that in the comments, because the other thing I think for women that we can do, and this is, we learn this and we see this and we witness this, so it becomes so second nature, is that instead of accessing what's happening inside of us and connecting with the care and connecting with the power source that is, like, being fully able to experience what's happening, we do go into a mode of trying to do something, right? Trying to make something happen so that we don't have this experience that's causing the discomfort. And in relationships, especially, this can be tricky and painful, and something I am very familiar with doing, right? Um, and the thing, I actually had a recent example I'll highlight for a moment, because I think this is so beautiful and so perfect. Is my partner recently shared that he was having some physical pain. All right, and it was scary for me to hear that he was in physical pain. And my initial reaction, right, was, you need to go to a doctor. We need to get you to a doctor, like, tomorrow. Right. And then, but we escalated, right? It became a moment where we escalated, because I was then trying to tell him what to do. He, felt like he had it handled. He knew what he was doing. And so I was luckily able to become aware that, because I was feeling scared, I was, like, trying to force him to take an action, instead of just acknowledging, oh man, right? I care. I love this man. I just want him to know that I love him. Right. And then I could say, hey, do you think you should get that checked out? right? But that's so different, right? That's actually opening to the connection, where initially, right, I did kind of want to check out from the care and the aliveness I was feeling, because just being willing to connect in that moment and be with what is felt really scary. And yeah, so this is like the beauty, is that we get to actually realize that, oh my gosh, right? The power source, the ability, the thing that we so actually truly want is the connection. Right? And it's this kind of is this like training process of relearning to actually, like, that you actually can want the thing that you do want, which is just the connection, like, which is the actual aliveness. And I love this conversation around aliveness, because I think it is so funny. I think most people would say they want to feel alive. I think most people, right? We're humans, like, I do want to feel alive. And right, there's sometimes this like bridge to cross of realizing that part of what that includes is learning to love everything about the experience of coming alive, right? Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and there can be layers to this, right? So this, I mean, for sure, this was like from that moment in the acupuncture bed, it wasn't like I woke up and I'm like, I want to feel everything. I love everything. No, right? We get layers, we get invitations, we get life experiences where we get to say, ooh, right, I care. I'm coming alive. There's an opportunity for connection, right? Where can I offer connection to myself first, and a willingness to be with this? And then, like, who are the people outside of me that I also want to bridge this connection with? And this gets to be like gentle and graceful. And that's like the beauty of this, is that it gets to be the opposite of what we often learn to do in those moments of powerlessness, which is can be to check out and to kind of make something happen. So thank you for that share. I love that. That's so, so beautiful. So I want to just highlight a few of these pieces that really activate power. And we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to share kind of like the contrast of what can deplete the sense of power, and share it a little bit more like explicitly, and then the pieces that replenish it, and then give us a really fun example to begin to close with. So a few of the key elements that I've found are so, so powerful to feeling, to really truly being like, ooh, okay, I do recognize I have power here. There's something I can do here. One is, like, quite simply, but so powerfully, the awareness of choice in every moment, right? That you can make an adjustment in every single moment. Right. And that, like, part of that for me is remembering that your past is not a good indicator of your current power and your current ability, right? And your ability to connect with new possibilities. And this is why I love so much the truth that really connecting with, like, willingness, and that love is always available. That, even in those moments, for example, when I'm on this acupuncture bed and I cannot get myself to get up, right? I can choose to tune into how I'm relating to myself as I'm lying on that bed, right? I can choose to say, you know what, instead of beating myself up, like, I'm going to love myself for being willing to be here, and for being willing to show up for this, and for tuning into what's actually happening inside of me. And so it sounds very simple, right? And it is so powerful to notice in those moments where you are, like, reminded of maybe a past experience of powerlessness, or a moment where, like, more than anything, you're feeling like, if one thing would just change, I could feel so much better, right? Like, those inevitable moments that happen. If you can use those moments as an opportunity to be like, where is there a choice for me that would invite more love in, that would invite more honoring in, right? Um, that would bring more love and grace and ease to this moment, first and foremost for me. And this is why love and willingness is like such a beautiful window in. because it can just start within, within your mind. And then, like, what one of the things I really believe in is kind of like a core I always come back to is relief before action. And, so often in that choice of like, man, right? Like when I'm feeling off, when I'm feeling scared, when I'm feeling like something is urgent, the impulse, right, to want to overcome that feeling of powerlessness is what can I do? Right. And so often, actually, the most powerful thing to do is to bring that ease, that relief within yourself so that the choice you make, right, is from that place of like what actually is true for me, what feels true and right, not what makes this go away, right? Which accidentally reinforces a feeling of powerlessness, right? I can't do anything about this. I don't like this. I don't feel like I have power here. And this is where choice calls all of that back. And so I want to just remind you of that piece and carry this one with you. The second thing, in addition to choice, is something that I like love, 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 love to play with. And I really invite you to try this on and experiment with this in your life. But owning your experiences like they are a pleasure. And I love this because in my journey, right, of knowing I was passing out and I wanted that to stop. And I, was trying to manage myself, trying to manage other people, like the word that I started to associate with life a lot was like it was a burden and something to deal with, right? Another thing I had to handle. And one of the ways that I started to learn about this word, like responsibility and needing to take control of something, was with Gabor Mate, who does the work on trauma. He's an incredible author and speaker. But I heard him say to use this word responsibility, mean, in a sense, to become more response able. And there was something in that really shifted in me. It helped me understand that like responsibility, right, isn't just pushing through burdens. It isn't just trying to get through something, right? It's how can I live my life so I feel able to respond to more and more things from this place of like, ooh, one, I can choose whether or not I do this. And two, is this a worthy pursuit? Because it's going to help me feel like I can respond and like I am able to respond to more experiences in my life, right? In this broader way that I get to feel like, oh, right, I get to live my life more fully. I get to love coming alive because, this is what we're here for, right? So yeah, so I invite you to try that on and think about your own responsibility, your own relationship to responsibility. And if there's room to play with, oh my gosh, right? Maybe there are things in my life that feel scary that I want, that are important to me, that currently feel like a burden. But oh man, I can see that if I see this as like an experiment for me to become able to respond to more like a broader range of experiences in this area of my life, right? Maybe then this can turn into like a worthy pursuit, right? Where I get to experience more beauty, more aliveness, and more of those things I really, really, truly desire. So I'd love to know, like, feel free to like give me yeah, if that resonates. Again, if you're listening on the recording and you feel that, like, I love those moments to like pause and put your hand on your heart and just breathe into it. And so the third piece, right? We want to remember choice. We want to remember that you get to own your experiences as a pleasure and choose your worthy pursuits, right? And like be aware of where there's a feeling of burden, knowing that you can decide, what is my worthy pursuit in here? And if it isn't, is there something I can let go of for now so that I can focus on a worthy pursuit? Right? Giving yourself permission to know that you can shift even where you put your attention and the area of life you're focusing on. And the third piece I want to share about this is ties into what we've been sharing about this idea that there is nothing to get rid of. There is nothing you have to change to know your power. Is understanding that Part of feeling more powerful is feeling the freedom and authority to take space up within yourself. And I want to share an example with this because one of the things when I think about this that comes up for me is, you know, I think he's a Marvel superhero, Iron Man, right? We have, right, Iron Man, right? He's like this, he's a human man, right? But he develops all this technology where he can like create these little fireball light things, and he can like he actually, this is what's fascinating to me, these are called repulsors. I actually looked this up. There's like repulsors that can come out of his hands and feet from his technology, right, to like help him protect from bad guys and like do, and right, he has something in him that he's created from this technology, right, and he can like fling it out. And this is how I feel like as humans, and especially as women, we've related to power, right? It's like we learn how to, armor up really well. We learn how to create this technology so that when things feel things and there's energy surges, we can be like, right? We can take the start of that and we can like fling it out. And right, and this is what happens, this is what we learn, this is what gets repeated, and it's so normal, right? Oh, there's a surge here, let me, what needs to be powered up? Right, like what needs some will and some momentum? And that's often what we assume we associate with power and strength, right? Can you feel any of this in your life when you think about it? Yeah, I so felt this, right? And I thought that's what power was. Like I really can relate to this Iron Man analogy of like, all right, yeah, like what's going on? And okay, I've got the technology for this. I've learned how to deal with this, right? Well, let me get my repulsors out. And yeah, but what we get to shift to is actually like getting to experience yourself as like the sun, right? Like you are like you, no technology, no added repulsors required. Like you are the sun, right? You like have the life force, the heat within you, right? And just like the sun, it just like when it is out and it is day, the sun just like naturally beams light and heat and energy, right? We don't see the sun like, creating little sunballs and throwing the sunballs down to us, right? Like there's no extra effort that the sun makes, to like get its heat to us. And I love this analogy too, right? Because as women, right, part of what we are connected to, I feel like in a bit of a different and deeper way than men and the masculine, even though I know we carry both the masculine and the feminine, I do believe that as women, um, we just have a natural ability and a natural strength in our feminine. And I love using this analogy of the sun, right? Because it is just a natural part of life, of nature, of life creation. And so I think that when I talk about this, like I share a deeper sense of like, oh my gosh, right? That feels so incredible to think like what is within me, right, is the power source, right? I don't have to throw anything. I don't have to make anything happen. I don't have to manage or control anything to be in touch with my power and be able to radiate out, right, the love and the energy and whatever it is that I want to create. And right, I'm not adding in the masculine element here, right? Obviously, we can take action, but it's taking action from this place of knowing there's nothing you have to get rid of or change or make different for you to be powerful and for you to make the choice that you're going to make from the knowing of your power, right? And that's the difference, right? We're not acting to prove our power. We're knowing our power. We're feeling our light. We're feeling all of the thoughts, sensations, emotions, all of the aliveness from caring about something and radiating that out and letting the action come from that place. Um, I'd love to know if that feels yummy to think about and relates. Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Yay. So yeah, it's like so a huge thing I want to help like us all sink into, right? Is that you have access to power, right? In this moment, in this moment, in this moment, right? Like we really, really do. And that it's like, how much can we really sink into loving the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations, right, that are going on within us? And this, I love the share earlier too about the checking out piece, because I actually feel like one of the most powerful ways back that I don't know if we talk like I don't I feel like I hear a lot of talk about relating to thoughts in new ways and emotions in new ways, but I feel like we can still have a bigger conversation around like physical sensation, right? Like really like what is just the actual physical sensation that's happening within me, right? And can I bring like willingness and love and acknowledgement to that? Right, and see that as actually part of me, like recognizing my ability to be that sun, to feel the things, right? Because in my experience, there is heat in feeling the feels in the body, right? Like it really is like it's like a heating up journey. Um, and so seeing that as all part of your powering up. So I want to tie into this, and we are going to go a little bit over the hour, but we won't go too much over. Um, the pieces though that I want to highlight connected to this, when you play with this idea of switching from like Iron Man technology repulsors, right? That accidentally, right? That maybe there's even a time and place for them. Who knows? But like how do we, when we're using those in ways that aren't getting us what we want, how do we shift that to like the sun power? I want to just name a couple of the things that from my experience like deplete that sense and what really gets us back to recuperating it. And so when I shared this story earlier, right, part of what I shared was a moment of fear, right? I felt scared. And but because of that fear, right, a lot of the voices around me and what I was connected to, right, was with this sense that something was wrong, something is bad. And the piece I want to highlight here that's really fascinating is that so often what becomes attached to that is this experience of shame, which for me, it's actually I'm going to be offering a class about this in the coming few months, which like untangling this a bit more. But something that's really fascinating to understand about shame is that, right, like shame is not just a simple emotion like anger and sadness when you have an experience, right? It becomes kind of like a soup of how you relate to yourself in a way that something is wrong. That and like for me, in my experience, the moment fear becomes this connection to something being wrong, and that the shame soup gets starts heating up. What happens is that is what initiates this feeling of needing to control, right? Needing to manage. And accidentally, and again, I don't think we do this on purpose, but when that shame soup gets activated and we're trying to control, the actions that we take end up provoking from a place of fear. Right. And I like this word provoke because I think that when we relate to one another, like we do in ways provoke each other. When we share our stories, when we share our life, right? We can't help but thinking about how that has to do with us. And so, and for good or for bad, one of the things I'm playing with calling myself is a provocateur of love, because I think this provoking is inevitable. But how do we do it more and more from a conscious place of provoking out of love versus like that provoking out of fear? And so I want to just name this too. So as you're sinking this in, right, understanding that part of what depletes the power is when fear is felt, which is normal and natural and happens in life. When you care, you come alive, right? But when that shame piece gets tied in and the thought right? Those 3 words, or how many words is it? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? 4 words, whatever. Right? When those 4 words get activated, so often this is the moment, right, when our power starts to get deactivated and it starts to get depleted, right? And our choices are more out of fear than love. And so becoming aware of those moments that you're actually starting to say, oh, something is wrong with me, something must be wrong with me, what's wrong with me, right, are actually such fabulous moments to start to turn inward, to start to like recuperate the power, right? Because part of what we do when we notice that there's something that's depleting us is we give ourselves the antidote, right? We give ourselves the opposite. And so, in this way, right, when we feel fear, part of what we have the opportunity to do is bring love and honoring and willingness. Right, one of the most powerful things that I heard I read a few years ago when I was on this journey was just how much honor and pride are healing antidotes to shame. And just how much when we say, you know what, I'm willing to be with this, right? Because shame does promote a feeling of self disgust, which is, right, even as I say it, like I've been working this through myself for a while, but even when I say the word disgust, a part of me still has like, "Ugh," right? Like, who wants to feel disgust? Nasty. And right, like when we can bring honor, right? Like, oh my, I'm willing to honor this. I'm willing to accept that this is here within me, right? Like that is actually how we power up, right? Like when I have a feeling of dizziness in me and nausea, right? And more I can be like, you're a part of my experience. I'm going to allow you to be here, right? And I actually let it in. That's where I power up. That's where we power up. And again, that can happen in our emotions and our sensations and our thoughts. That really gets to be in our whole full body experience of life. But when we can do this as women, right? Like this is how we radiate. This is how you become magnetic. This is how all of the things that you thought you had to like force to make happen and overcome actually just start to show up when you don't expect them in ways that just blow your mind and you're like, what? Like it's really crazy. And it's vulnerable, right? Because we come alive when we care. And we come alive when we care because we want connection. And there was often experiences in the past where that connection might not have been available. And so often what this becomes is this knowing and this understanding that now, in order to experience the connection that you want, in order to come alive in the ways that you truly feel called to, right, there is no longer anything you have to fix or get rid of to make that available. So, yes. So these are the big things that I wanted to leave you with, to contemplate, to sit with, to explore, um, and just to feel into. I'd love to know, yeah, I think like from here we'll start to wrap, and I'm going to share a little bit about like if there's even if you're listening to the recording, if you're like, oh man, I want to continue this conversation, I want to let you know how you can do that. But I will invite, if you're here with me and you're listening, I'd love to know, like as you're soaking this in, what is something from this conversation you're really excited to take away with you. If there is something you'd like to share, I invite you to pop that in. If it's a contemplation, if it's a question, if it's some of the words that you heard today or a way that you soaked them in that really is alive in you, I'd love to hear them. And yeah, and as I'm waiting to see if there's anything that you'd like to share, I would just invite you, if this is a conversation that you want to continue, um, I'm thinking what I'm going to do is on the recording follow up for this, I'm going to share a link so that you can reach out to me, set up a one on one conversation. I do offer one-on-one coaching, and so we can have a conversation to see if that's a good fit. And I also have a program that is coming in a couple months that if you want to be on my email list and share more, make sure you respond to one of those follow-up emails and let me know that you would like to be in the loop and really continue to have this conversation. So I'm going to take a sip of water and then I'm going to read at the last piece here and we'll start to wrap up. Yeah, I love that. So just looking at one of the pieces here, like I'm still soaking in the idea of checking out as perpetuating powerlessness. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's I love that. I love that that's a lot what's part of what's alive in you and checking in with that. Yeah, it's for me it this journey of actually seeing like checking in with feeling dizzy and feeling nauseous as part like and loving it and honoring it and being aware of it as actually giving me more power has been a really interesting journey because I learned to be so afraid of it. Um, but yeah, it's incredible. I think anything in our like actual physical internal experience that we can start to be like, this is mine is like right? Like even for me to say it, I'm like, right, I feel like I have this lioness piece of me that wakes up, right? That's like, yes, this is mine, right? It's yeah. And the thing that I love about this, and I just want to highlight the difference as a woman, right, is it's this ownership that's not like, right? It's not the Iron Man energy, right? It's not like, right, I have this and I'm gonna whoosh, right? Like I have this power. Whoosh. It's like, no, I am this power, right? Like, and there's nothing you have to change. There's nothing I have to change. Like this power is alive in me always. So yay, I love that that's like, yeah, that that's alive for you. Beautiful, beautiful. Amazing. So, I get as we wrap up, just the last thing, this feels really nice to do to start to close. One of the things we shared in the very beginning was just this idea of noticing your posture and just noticing how you're feeling. So before we fully close the call, I just invite you to notice your posture just for a moment as you're sitting, as you're soaking in these stories, how they relate for you, noticing the thoughts that are coming up for you, the sensations that you feel in your own body, right? Perhaps noticing the emotion that's present and letting there be this voice and whether you're a person that just says something and you can visualize it and you can see it or if you feel into things whatever way that is true for you is just like letting love and willingness and a sense of honoring for whatever thoughts, whatever physical sensations, whatever emotions are in you on your inhale, on a couple exhales, sending this love and honor and willingness into exactly what is happening in you in this moment. Feeling the rightness of it, feeling your okayness, that you are okay, that you are more than okay, that you are in a space where love is always available, where safety and security and your physical wellness can now always be tended to. Just sinking that truth in And maybe taking a moment just to gently feel your chest lift, your shoulders relax. Maybe letting your chin lift just gently, just feeling that sense of honor and pride in your willingness to love and honor more deeply a part of you that's alive. Beautiful. Amazing. So, thank you so, so much for being here. I'll let you we'll wrap up with you getting to be in that yummy, juicy space. Yay. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I thank you so much for being on this call and soaking this in. I'll share a follow up email. And if you're listening to the recording, you can find some information below as well. And sending you so much love. It's such a pleasure to spend this hour with you. Mwah. So much love.